Hi, you're listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case.
We will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry. Today's guest is Paul Harding. Paul is head of group tendering for Eurofins Forensic Services, part of the international life sciences and testing group Eurofins, where his role encompasses bidding, commercial, and legal advisory services. With almost 25 plus years experience in various roles, of which 15 have been bid and tender functions, his bidding career has come through the defense and security into forensic sectors. He is accredited at the professional level with the APMP and has won bids into Bluelight customers, local councils, corporates, national governments, the UK Ministry of Defense, the US Department of Defense, and the United Nations. Paul is also mentor on the APMPUK Rapport Mentor Program. Welcome, Paul, to Scribble Talk.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, Paul. Let's go back to the very beginning, Paul. Where were you born in your high school and education?
Oh my gosh, I was born in Manchester in England, so I'm a northern lad at heart, and we tended to hop around the northwest. I spent most of my growing up years in Bury, but I'm a pub brat, so my mum and dad had pubs in and around the Bury and Manchester area, so we moved several times. Yeah, my education was mostly in and around Bury, though. Classic, good old-fashioned, comprehensive turned secondary school.
Got it. So when was the first time you actually had your first drink, Paul? Considering your parents might listen to this episode, you might need to align your stories.
Well, so there's the difference, isn't there? There's the first one I bought myself and the first one that was bought for me by a parent. There's not a great deal of difference because being a northern lad, drinking cider on the golf course was something that we did from not long after starting secondary school, so 11 or 12.
Oh wow! Okay.
My first drink bought by my dad, I still remember, was in the Conservative Club in Unsworth, where he was steward at the time.
Right.
He was very proud to buy me a lager shandy. Not knowing that I was drinking out on the golf course.
Well, that's good. It's always great when your parents buy you a drink, regardless of how old you are, it's always a great feeling. But that's good, Paul. And school and colleges around the Bury area, is it?
Yeah, so it was Castlebrook High School in Bury, which was formerly a comprehensive school and became a high school the year that I moved there. And then a sixth form in the area because, as I say, the high school didn't really have sixth form facilities.
Got it. Yes, I think the school system varies in the countries. I mean, like this is the senior school before you get into university, right, Paul? Sixth form?
Correct, sixth form. You spend your last 2 years there doing studies before university.
Correct. So after sixth form, Paul, where did you go for university, or did you go for university?
Yeah, I hopped over to Lancaster, keeping to my northern roots. Did my degree in chemistry in Lancaster. Did my master's in polymer science in Lancaster.
All right.
And then went up to Edinburgh for a little while to do my PhD, where I spent 4 absolutely adorable years watching paint dry.
Wow. Dr. Paul Harding.
That's me.
Oh, wow, Paul. I mean, like that's a lot of studies, Paul. Like 3-4 years of a bachelor's, a year of master's, and another 4 years of PhD. Yep. Why science? Why polymer science, Paul? What got you into that field?
It was the influence of a teacher, actually, a guy who I'll never forget, called Mr. Shaw back at Castlebrook, who pointed me towards the sciences at age 12 and a half. And essentially said that's what you're going to do. So when in the UK school system at that age, you have these things called options where you determine which courses you're going to take exams in. Prior to prior to that, everybody studies a relatively common curriculum. And I was enjoying things like English language and English literature. I know I was also very good at those, but there was an emphasis on science and technology at the time, trying to bring in people from a working class background into the sciences.
Right.
And Mr. Shaw decided that I was going to be one of them. So I did maths, I did more maths, I did electronics, I did physics, I did chemistry, and polymer chemistry I chose because it was a supposedly new discipline at the university. And looking at the engineering of it, which I never was an engineer, but always enjoyed seeing things that work. Looking at the engineering of it, I really enjoyed actually getting a little bit hands-on, which in an ordinary chemistry course you don't really get to do, because most of the science has been done before until you get to quite an advanced level.
Got it. Just for the sake of listeners, Paul, what is polymer science?
Good question. It's so polymers are plastics, and they come in various forms. During my masters, I was looking at the type of polymers that will go into injection molding machines. So it was thermoplastics, looking at how injection molding systems could work. During my PhD, I was looking at the polymers which go into paint systems. So I was trying to work on paint systems that use fewer solvents, which is very good environmentally, but can be used outside and so won't wash off when rained on, because water-based paints would tend to wash off when they were rained on. Hence, spending 4 years literally watching paint dry.
Nice, Paul. Looks like an amazing PhD to do. I'll leave it to the listeners to decode what you just said. Just pretend I understood. I'm sure Ashley is much more brighter, but she will pick that up later. So from that point, I mean, what was your very first role, Paul? I mean, did you take a research associate job in university, or did you had any part-times in between?
Well, I mean, my mum and dad instilled a really strong work ethic. So I've had a newspaper round when I was a kid, and then worked in the pub and washed dishes and served beer and carried plates, worked behind bars, and even when I was doing my PhD, I was working as a volleyball coach. So I've always had some sort of work, but on the day I finished my PhD, I said to myself, that's my last day in the lab. and I went out and did a sales job.
Oh.
It was technical sales, so I was selling chemicals and pigments, but yeah, I moved straight from the lab out into sales and have never looked back. I've never had any desire to go back into the lab and titrate anything.
Got it. So let's talk through your career timeline then, Paul, from all the way up into you entered the bid and proposal career.
So I guess, as in common with lots of people in our game, it was kind of unanticipated, because when you're in a sales environment, you do write sales proposals, and as I said earlier on, I quite enjoy the writing side of things. So I was rapidly becoming the go-to guy for a help with the sales proposal for customer X, and it moved on from there, where I was doing sales proposals for selling pigment and selling commercial additives to plastics and paint companies and ink companies, to genuine formal tenders only when I took a step out into the security sector. So I spent some time working for Group 4 on one of their international operations, and at that time I'd never really encountered formal, in particular US government proposal work, and my first encounter with it was a cold bath, as we were pitching for guarding the base in Kosovo at the time. So it was a very, very steep learning curve. And from that, I sort of discovered a home. You know how it is in this game. Sometimes you discover your tribe.
Yeah.
And I found the people I liked working with and the way that I like to sell. And now what I describe to people is that my job is selling things in writing.
That's nicely put, Paul. So over the course of 25 plus years, Paul, both on the sales side and also on the bids and proposal side, you might have come across a lot of interesting clients, a lot of interesting proposals. Pick 3 that you find fascinating for various reasons and talk us through, Paul.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Where to start? So the first one would have been that force protection role in Kosovo. And it was fascinating because I did not know how much I didn't know. So this was essentially, again, a little bit of history. Because of what was going on in the Balkans at the time, the Americans had quite a presence out there. And our job was to allow the soldiers to soldier. So we were providing guards for the base and dogs and that kind of security environment. So not only did I particularly not know the sector, I didn't particularly know the Department of Defense methods for bidding either. So in terms of a learning curve, I don't think I've ever been through anything as steep, and I will always remember that one. Yeah, the second one is probably the bid which I am most proud of, and it's also the bid where I met Pippa Birch for the first time, and we've known each other ever since then. Which was working with, pitching to the Metropolitan Police Service in the UK for forensic science work. It was, how can I put this? It was revolutionary at the time in that the Met Police were considering using what they called a managed service. It's not quite a managed service as people in facilities would understand it, but it was to bring in one organization to look after all of their forensics. And they were market leading in terms of their thinking. And when they came to market, we had to look at delivering a full service provision to their requirements. And it was, and still is, an example, a really shining one of how public and private sector can work together for the public good. I mean, I'm tremendously proud of the team I put together and led through the bid, not just the contract that resulted from it, but the fact that we as a nation could arrive at that place and do something that the government have recognized as a shining light of its type. And then, of course, you get your memorable for the wrong reason.
Got it.
And I have a few of those, but one of them was for a client who shall remain nameless, but who we ended up injuncting and taking to court on the basis of introduction of at least 3 additional scoring criteria.
Got it.
Where we'd outscored their preferred bidder in enough areas that they had to change the game. And we caught them at it. And I was very pleased that we caught them at it and then did the right thing by calling them out.
That's so nice, Paul. I mean, as you rightly said, every bid teaches us something. It's not just the same, regardless whether it's the same sector, same type of people, same clients, etc. But I'm glad that you had a variety and you still keep going. And wish you all the success in all the bids that you do, Paul.
Thank you very much. But for your listeners, just so you know, I would not endorse taking a client to court. It's not a recommended step of action.
Correct. But sometimes it's important to stand for the right thing, Paul, as you rightly said, because if this client continues to do the same thing, that just put a shortage in the market, and then it gives something. But I'm glad that your company did, and you did, and kudos to you and the team. So at what point in your career, Paul, did you come across APMP as an industry body?
So that was, oh crikey, that's a long time now. I think it was about 2009, maybe 2010. When I joined the APMP, there weren't many people that did what I did, certainly as a sector, as you can imagine. So when I joined, it was civils, defence primes, IT and telecoms, and it's evolved incredibly since then, hasn't it?
Yeah, totally, yes.
But what I think what I learned pretty quickly though was that we had a shared list of, if not issues and values, certainly a shared list of war stories. And the things that I was encountering with my teams in my sector were not entirely different from the things that somebody who was in IT was dealing with their teams in their sector. And that was revelationary to find out, there are other people doing different things, but with the same problems.
Right. 100%, Paul, 100%. So in this 10, 12 years of associating with the APMP, you are not just a member, you went all the way up to being a professional certified. And also, you also are a mentor, part of their mentor program. Talk us through, Paul, about the mentor program and your certification journey.
Well, you might have noticed by the fact that I went up to PhD that I like to gain a qualification or two. So for me, the climb to professional was as much to prove that I could do it, as for any other reason, because I'm old enough and bald enough that a foundation entry-level certification wouldn't have sat well with me, and needed to see whether I could stand toe-to-toe with the people who'd made it to professional. Not that I'm competitive or anything, but I'm intensely competitive. So that was the reason why I did that. And I would think I was quite fortunate in that the time I went for my professional, the market for forensics in the UK was going through a number of procurement changes that I had to help navigate our organization through. So I had a very good story to tell about taking market changes through to an organization and ensuring we were ready for it. And I'd spent some time at professional level, and then even did one presentation at one of the conferences in the UK. That was the year we were acquired, so it was quite a busy year. And had realized that other than doing that presentation, I wasn't giving as much back as I would have liked to. My fairly broad remit means I'm often quite reactive. So taking on a more permanent role within the board, or even alongside the board, as I'd started to do with the development team under Alan Howard at one time, just wasn't there for me. And again, Pippa is to blame for so many things. She introduced me to the team of mentors and asked if I'd like to give it a shot. And being me, I said, sure, why not? So I went along to the training under Jackie Jenks, and it was all things that I knew but often didn't use as frequently as I would have thought that I used them, if that makes any sense to you at all. So everything she said was common sense, and everything she said made sense. So I was partnered with a mentee within a month of the training, and she was with me for the best part of a year, and I took on a second mentee 6 months ago, both of whom have been an absolute delight to work with. They're personally intensely motivated. They know what they want to achieve. And I get to sit and ask, interesting questions of people who are very keen to progress.
And how does the mentoring program work?
That's a really good question. I could just answer that glibly and say very well, thank you. But really it works by people who want to be mentored getting in touch through APMPUK and requesting a mentor. Then Jackie Jenks and the Rapport team will make contact with you as an individual, find out what you want to achieve, and try and align you to one of the mentors who has the most value for what it is you want to achieve. So my two mentees have come through unconventional routes to their role, as have I, and have come through situations where they've been part of a large team and a small team, as have I. So it was quite good for us to be aligned. And the way forward for the mentee-mentor relationship is so transparent and simple to follow that it's something that I wish I had known of when I was 25 years younger.
In honor of our time, we call the next round, which is rapid random round. So before I hand over, you actually take time. Tell us 3 things not many people know about you.
Okay, 3 things. Let me start with. Not many people know that I do Krav Maga, which is a relatively little known Israeli self-defense system. That I have an autistic son and live in quite a neurodiverse household. And that I love teen movies, sports underdog movies, and I'm a complete sucker for competitive elimination programs in disciplines I know nothing about.
Well, there's so much to think for. You might need to distill one thing of let me do that before I give you a back to that. Well, let's start with the first one, which is this defense Israeli defense in what?
Yeah, so it's called Krav Maga, KRAV MAGA, and it stands for contact combat. And unlike sort of your more traditional martial arts, it is a self-defense system that focuses on fast reactions using gross motor skills to situations that you're, potentially more likely to encounter than somebody standing in pajamas wearing a belt. And I discovered that when I was looking for something that was a little more engaging than the gym. I train best in and around people, and there's no real therapeutic substitute, I think, for punching people in the face after a long day in the office.
The next one you mentioned was the autistic son and also the family. Talk us through about that as well, Paul. How did you find the autism, and any tips or any stuff that you would like to share to listeners?
Sure. Yeah, my oldest boy is autistic, but is highly functioning. So we have a long string of acronyms which define the main symptoms that he has, which include ODD for oppositional defiance opposition defiance disorder, PDA for pathological demand avoidance, ADD for attention deficit disorder, and AS for Asperger's syndrome. So you put all those together, and you have a bright child who finds it challenging to do things on the executive function side of the scale. So getting started on things is tricky, and also when routine is underway, breaking routine is also kind of tricky. But having said that, he's affectionate child, well, a grown man now. He's 22. But he's affectionate, he's considerate, he's polite, and those things work despite any neurodiversity. You can always be polite, you can always be kind. And as far as the neurodiversity in the household goes, I think if Matt, my oldest boy, had not been quite so obviously autistic, then at least one of my twins, and certainly my wife, would have been through for an ADHD diagnosis. So I myself fall very much towards the autistic side of thinking. So we as a house try and maintain a more or less chaotic environment so that routine and patterns don't set in.
Thank you for sharing that, Paul. I mean, like, everything is an experience, and I'm glad that your eldest is teaching you life, and you learn a lot from him, and through him, you are sharing this to us. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for this. Over to Ashley. We'll continue with your board game addictions and your competitive sports and hobbies, interests, and the rest. Thank you, Paul.
So, Paul, we understand that you love beating people at board games. Can you tell us about your competitive side and how that transfers over to board games, and maybe some of your favorites?
Well, I really don't like to lose. Full stop. So we, as a family, one of the ways of engaging my autistic son was to find some way that he could be comfortable around a large number of people, or a larger number of people than just our family, and board games was it. So we regularly play in the house, and I personally am a big fan of sort of the party games like Trivial Pursuit or Articulate, where you get to play in a team and you get to work together. But I love the more complex strategy games. And because I'm a bit of a nerd, they tend to be on that fantasy side, where games like Munchkin, and the games that have come out from Czechoslovakia by a guy called Vlada Chvatil, which are games like Code Words and Garbage Truckers, where the rules are quite complex, but once you've got a hang of the rules, the gameplay is incredibly fun and very fast paced.
Oh, wow. Some new ones in that list for me, for sure. I can relate to Trivial Pursuit. Maybe that's about it.
the game that I'm recommending to everybody right now is this game called Code Words, because it's a social language based game. And if you've ever played anything like Articulate or Pictionary, Code Words is brilliant, because what you're looking for is a single word that has links to more than one other word, and you're guiding people towards those other words. And it's very simple in play, but quite challenging at the same time. And not only that, but because I'm quite erudite and like my long words, it's another one that I can win at. So,
oh my gosh, love it. I also have a note here about turning wood on a lathe. Are you a woodworker in your free time?
Yes, but it isn't anything flat. So I don't do cabinetry. It is woodworking on a lathe. So what I tend to do is make goblets, bowls, pens,
Oh.
boxes,
Uh-huh.
and much like the crav, it's something where you have to be very present for it. For quite different reasons. Obviously, crav, if you're not present, somebody's going to punch you in the face.
Hmm.
And with wood turning, it's quite meditative. You know, sometimes you know what it is you want to make. Sometimes the wood tells you what you want it to be, what it wants to be.
Yeah.
And you have to be there and be paying attention, because if you don't, your tool is going to catch on something that's spinning at 2,000 revs per minute, and disaster will ensue one way or another.
Yeah, I can imagine. So do you have a favorite piece that you've created?
Yes, so absolutely do. There's a very tricky thing called a captive ring, and for a wedding gift, sorry, a hand fasting gift for a friends of ours, I made 2 goblets, and they were matching goblets, and on the stem there are what are called captive rings, and that is two turned rings which are made from the same piece of wood as the goblet.
Oh,
So
wow.
so they don't come off past the base of the goblet, they don't come off past the top of the goblet, and they're turned in and around that area. So it is one goblet with the 2 rings on it to symbolize the 2 of them together. And yeah, I was intensely proud of those. They are gorgeous looking things, and also are quite tricky to make.
Yeah, that does sound very tricky, and I bet they're amazing.
I loved making them. I probably spent more time, because it was a gift for someone else as well. I probably
Mhm.
spent more time on it than I would
Yeah.
have on any piece for myself.
Yeah, and I love the symbolism of that too, right? Coming from one piece of wood.
Absolutely. And I, even when all I'm doing is playing around making like a candlestick, I'll try and make that candlestick different or suit to the person, whether it's with varnish or with dyes or with stains or just with the shape.
Yeah.
I think if you're giving a gift, just reaching in your back pocket and giving them something you already have doesn't have the same attention paid to it, the same sentimentality, as giving a gift that you've thought about and personalized.
Yeah, absolutely. And then all, that time and the thought that goes into making it so beautiful.
Yeah, and my go-to gift at the moment, though, I have to say, is pens. I make I make dozens of them, half of which have somebody in mind, and half of which I find all around the house, because despite the fact I've got thousands, I can never find one.
Yeah. So many of us can relate to that. I'm a notorious pen stealer by accident, though.
See, I had to start making pens out of wood because I'm a notorious pen chewer, and that's not good. That's not good in a corporate environment to have a tatty pen. So I found that I couldn't chew a pen out of wood or out of metal, so I started making them out of those.
Smart. All right, so we're going to pivot into our kind of random rapid fire question round. No right answer. Don't think too hard about the answers. Are you ready?
No, but let's go.
All right. So what is the most useful invention of all time?
The most useful invention of all time would have to be the paperclip. And anyone who tells you anything different is wrong. But that's because it is not just a paperclip. There are so many other things you can use that little bendy piece of wire for, by unbending it and rebending it. And I've got countless different things bent out of shape on my desk here, as an inveterate fiddler, where the paperclip is also a great stem tool.
Yes, yeah. I'm notorious for bending paper clips and all sorts of things as well. So what is the weirdest thing that you've ever eaten?
Oh my gosh, that would have to be. It would have to be one of the things I had when I was in China. So I had jellyfish out there, and it was the weirdest tasting and the weirdest textured thing I'd ever eaten.
Mm.
But the weirdest thing I think was duck webs. So the web from between the toes on a duck's feet.
Okay.
Because the Chinese like to go from top to toe on an animal, and we went to a duck restaurant and everything was on the menu.
Yeah. Wow. So what is the texture like for duck web?
It's like chicken skin,
Okay.
only not crispy because it was in a sauce, but slightly thicker and slightly chewier.
Okay. Nice.
So it was all about the flavor that they loaded onto it, and the flavor was gorgeous.
Yeah. So what kind of spices? Like peppery, spicy, or just kind of?
This was more sort of the allspice type flavors.
Oh.
So it was, yeah. So it was a very, very rich broth it was served in, and it was heavily seasoned, and it was delicious.
That sounds delicious. So what is your favorite fruit?
You can't beat an apple. Sorry, I know that that's dull, but there's so much choice, and there's so many things you can do with them.
Such a good point. If you could transport back in time to experience one event from the past, what would you choose and why?
Oh my gosh, that one is a tough one. I would like to, provided knew I could come back, I would quite like to go to the, and I'm sorry to all of our foreign listeners here, I would quite like to go to the site where the bouncing bomb was developed, which was during World War II. The Air Force group called the Dam Busters developed a bomb that could be dropped out of a plane and would bounce along the surface of a water before reaching the dam and exploding. My grandfather was an engineer in that team and has got tales about that time that I would love to see.
Wow, that's such an interesting connection to that time period. I bet he has some fascinating stories.
Oh yeah, he was a bit of a rogue as well. So he's got a lot of stories of stealing jam from the officers' mess, and similar stories.
Oh my goodness. So what is the naughtiest thing that you've done in school?
Failed to attend. Yeah, I think mine. Yeah, mine was definitely absconding out into the woods to play on the rope swing.
Nice. So what would be the worst buy one, get one free sale of all time?
Oh my gosh, the worst buy one, get one free. False legs.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I have both of mine, so if I bought one and got two, I'd need neither.
Right. What is the furthest, or where is the furthest you've traveled to?
I'm trying to work that out. So I've traveled to Southeast Asia, so Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, China, Taiwan, Vietnam, but I couldn't tell you geographically which one of them was the furthest. But I did. They were business trips. It was definitely a place I enjoyed going to.
Okay, so which of those is your favorite, or it doesn't even have to be the farthest place?
So my favorite of them was Malaysia. I enjoyed my time in Kuala Lumpur an incredible amount. I was I was staying with colleagues who hosted me at their own house, and it was the most welcome I've ever been on a business trip. It was just beautiful. So I got to be part tourist as well, because staying with people you know at the night allows you to do more than just see the inside of a hotel room.
Oh, that's amazing, especially when you get to experience the culture and go out and see things.
Oh, absolutely. And I like my food, and the street food in Kuala Lumpur was fantastic.
Oh, I can imagine. So if you were to create your own board game, what would you name it and how would you play? What would the rules be?
Oh, now I've thought of many board games in my time. It would, so I think I'd go, and it would be something classic like Dungeon Crawl or something like that, based on a group of adventurers entering a space and then making their way through it using a lot of complex rules about how you fight things and win or lose. So I'm not stealing directly from Dungeons and Dragons here, but a board game in that vein that most importantly was accessible to sort of 8 years and up, rather than my preference for the most complicated rule set I can come up with.
Oh, I like it. So what movie or book character are you most similar to?
I think I'm like Count Zero in William Gibson's book Count Zero. It's a cyberpunk book, so I'm sorry for those of you who aren't into that stuff. And he has a knack of just getting it, and it sort of resonated with me as the way that I learn is I sort of learn by osmosis. And he does that only for guessing people's username and passwords for hacking into systems, which I've never done, by the way. But I think when I read the book and saw what he did, I went, oh, that's how I learn stuff. So yeah, Count Zero.
Oh, wow. How cool. It's so great when you have like a personality trait that you can relate to so much with a character in a movie or book. And that's quite amazing there.
Isn't it? I didn't think quoting someone from Mean Girls would have been quite right for me.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're going to pivot over to our gratitude round. Who are the people who have been most influential in your life and career?
So I know it's a bit trite, but Jackie, my wife, has influenced me more than anyone else. She's genuinely my other half. So we used to say that I did her order, she did my social, and that's been true for as long as we've known each other. And she believes I can do anything, and with her support I probably can. But I've also been quite fortunate in some of the bosses I've had who they saw something in me and just let me run with it. So I've got a relatively short list of people there who without whom I wouldn't be where I am, because they just let me grow.
Those are the best bosses.
Yeah, absolutely. They didn't try to stick me in the, in inverted commas, corporate box. Instead, they looked at what I could do, what the organization needed, what it didn't have, and worked out whether I could do it.
Amazing.
It's perfect for a jack of all trades.
Yeah, for sure. Well, sounds like, some amazing bosses and a great wife to have as your, other half. What is one personal trait you like most about yourself?
I like that I'm kind. I think it's sometimes in a corporate world misunderstood as weak. And just because I don't put up with nonsense doesn't mean that I'm not kind. I will always listen. I'll always pay attention. and will respect the views, abilities, or preferences of another person wherever I can.
It's amazing. Such an important trait. And I do agree. Sometimes, kindness is misconstrued in the business world, and it really shouldn't be.
I mean, it's one of those areas where, you're often told, if you can't say something good, don't say something at all. But sometimes even criticism is kindness, because if you're letting somebody continue to do something that harms them or their career prospects or their opportunities, you need to be able to do that as well. And that's how I apply it within a business context.
Yeah, well said. Great point. So what have you observed lately in these COVID times that reminded you that people are kind or good?
It's a kind of convoluted relationship, because my sister-in-law's father-in-law, my sister-in-law last year, her husband and her separated, and she's been a year in lockdown with her children and single. So she's been a single mom with 4 kids.
Wow.
And a full-time job. And her father-in-law found out she was going on her first proper date in a year, once restrictions had lifted and she was getting to know people, on a night where her former husband couldn't take the kids because they'd had a positive COVID test in their household.
Oh no.
So Terence, her father-in-law, stepped in and said, it's important for you to be able to go. I will take the kids. I will come and sit the kids while you go out on this date. And I think that is from somebody who is not related to her. And in fact, in cases of separation, you'd expect them to be on the other side.
Right.
To do something like that was kind and generous with his time.
Absolutely. And so human. So moving over to our final questions, what is one common myth about a profession that you would like to debunk?
That it's admin.
Yeah.
I do a little chart when I try and show people what it is that we do, and I link the stages of activity to the admin workload that goes alongside it. And there's a big spike right at the start, and you can never get past that, because you've got to read all the documents, you've got to have them all in place, you've got to know where they are. And there's a big spike right at the end, because you've got to make sure they're perfect and you've got to make sure they go in on time. And then the other stuff in the middle, everything from kickoff onwards, has got much more thought and intelligence applied to it than most people who aren't in this industry would realize.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things because as an organization we've been through a few changes of senior management up to exec. It's one of the things I have to more or less constantly reiterate, that we're not just a mid-office overhead function. We're work winning.
Yeah, so true and well said.
Thank you.
So what advice would you like to give to your fellow bid and proposal professionals who are listening?
So this is going to sound odd coming from a jack of all trades, but it is specialize. If you can find an area in your bid discipline that you enjoy and that your organization needs and that it doesn't have, take it on. Become the subject matter expert in that part of the world. Become the go-to person, because it's at that point that people start seeing this as more than admin. We find ourselves then becoming the person that people speak to. I've got a reputation as the person who reads every piece of paper remembers most of it and will have everything on file back to, you know, the day Adam was a boy. So that anything that's happened in any bid in the last 12 years in this organization will be somewhere in my system. And that kind of become the go-to person for something is what I would advise anybody in any profession, but it's particularly relevant, I think, for us.
Oh yeah, great advice there. Oh, so Paul, you've done so much with your career. You have done so much with your schooling as well. Such a vast achievement set there. What's next for you? We're curious. You know, what are you looking forward to in the future?
It's really interesting because in the short to medium term future, it's back to the core. Policing in the UK is about to embark on its biggest procurement cycle in the last several years. So having gone through a comparative lull of big bids, where we've actually spent the last couple of years encouraging customers to extend rather than recompete, because from my perspective, I'd rather win a one-person competition than win a five-person. We're now at the point where that can't happen anymore. Right. So the next year and a half is going to be about intense focus on core bidding activities and winning, and I hate the phrase, but I'm going to use it, winning must-win bids. They're ones where we're incumbent. They're ones where we've already got vested capacity. We've got overheads aligned up to them, and we're ready to deliver. But we need to make sure that we don't drop the ball in re-winning the work. And then after that, it's back out of that circle again and finishing a legal qualification. I got my level 7 in international business law last year, and my LLM will follow, but I'm not going to be doing that for at least a year until this massive Everest of new bids is passed.
Oh my gosh, well, you certainly stay busy there. That's amazing.
I can't sit still without my brain working, so I decide it's easier to make my brain work than it is to try and get it to switch off.
Oh wow. Well, lots of exciting things for you in the future. Was there anything that you had hoped to discuss today that we haven't covered?
No, it's been a delight to talk to you both, and to be hit with some very surprising questions.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for your time today. It really has been a privilege to have you with us here at Scribble Talk. We wish you all the good health and happiness. Please continue to inspire bid and proposal industry colleagues and everyone else around you. Stay safe, stay sane, stay healthy.
Thank you both. Have a great day.
Thank you, Paul.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchuscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Pastor Sundram,
signing off.